You make a distinction with the first noble truth. Rather than to say life is suffering, you say that it's part of being human to feel discomfort. I think that is such a better description of the Buddhist philosophy.
Well, thank you, Pat. This is something I was taught by Pema children. And yeah, that's a mistranslation, evidently, and terribly discouraging, I think.
Yes.
Sign on to this belief system, and you've got to accept that life is suffering.
This is right up there with you sin and you go to hell.
Exactly. So the only good place to be is dead. So, no.
Ellen Adelman is the author of Mind, Body, Intelligence, A Guide to Nurturing Compassion Inside and Out. The book is a blend of psychology and spirituality, partly through the lens of Buddhist wisdom. This book is right down my alley, and I think this conversation will be right down yours. Come join us. For subscribers, there's even more, including an extended behind-the-scenes conversation. Subscribe at bumpintheroad.substack.com. Ellen, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Hi, Pat, and thank you very much for having me. So my story, I have always wanted to be a psychologist. I've always been fascinated with the mind and how it works. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I have a big brother who's a psychologist, and I admired him. I still do. And it seemed like a good path for me. And so I did. I jumped through all the hoops and had learned a lot along the way. And then when I left home and went to college, I did need to have some therapy, which made a fantastic difference in my life and helped me encounter all the things that were sort of my internal demons. And I shall be eternally grateful for those people who helped me along my journey. And then, in graduate school, I studied many things, and I had some fantastic experiences with in vivo supervision, which was so powerful and wonderful. And I am grateful to all those people who provided it. And then as I went along in my life journey, I began to feel like it would be a good thing to learn more about spirituality. I'm Jewish, and I went to a workshop on spirituality, and I thought, psyche is spirit. Where do these things come together? And it wasn't anywhere in my training. In fact, I found out that one of the reasons spirituality is not included in graduate school training for psychologists is that Freud said religion was the opiate of the masses.
Oh, but religion and spirituality can be two very different things.
Absolutely. But, threw the baby out with the bathwater, shall we say.
Yeah.
And so then I started to explore that. And I went to a wonderful workshop at the Cape Cod Institute, which I don't know if it still exists, but it was really great because it was a week-long workshop, and but it was 9 to 12 every morning, and then you had the rest of the day and the evening free.
Oh, nice.
And I happen to love Cape Cod, and I met these three wonderful teachers, one of whom was a priest, one of whom was an ex-nun, and one of whom was a psychoanalyst. And they were talking about integrating spirituality and psychotherapy. And that was where I was introduced to Pema Chodron, wonderful Buddhist teacher, and learned about the basics of meditation. And that started me on my journey to create Mind, Body, Intelligence.
Meditation is one of my favorite topics, so I have to bring it up. Your book really is a remarkable guide for anybody wanting to get into meditation. Why should somebody want to meditate?
Wow. So I hope I didn't bite off more than I could chew, but I really tried to make mind body intelligence comprehensive, to really offer people some help, not only with the our inner demons that plague us and cause us suffering, but also to learn how to connect with the body mind. And this is something we get no education about.
Yeah.
Um, and really, we don't get very much education about how to manage our emotions and our feelings. And we're a very prescription reliant culture. And so meditation offers so many positive, wonderful things. When we meditate, we focus on the diaphragmatic breath, which means that when the in breath, your belly rises, and on the out breath, it falls. And your chest doesn't move. In fact, in traditional Chinese medicine, anxiety is located in the lungs.
Hmm.
So diaphragmatic breathing is connected with the parasympathetic state, which is the alternative to the fight or flight or freeze state. And when we're in that state, we get all kinds of wonderful benefits. We get growth hormone, our immune system gets enhanced, we get serotonin, we get endorphins, which are our natural opiates of the body. And a whole bunch of healing and repair can happen physiologically. And so that's a tremendous benefit to sit. And it's really funny because I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk about the breath, because there's a lot of folklore out there that, many times people have come into my practice and said, "Oh, I have meditation practice." "Oh, that's wonderful. Tell me about that." "Well, what do you do with the breath?" "What?" Oh yeah, this is what I do. I was taught to hold my breath, to count to 8, and then we
Well,
okay, so
there are breathing techniques that are helpful for stress reduction. There's no question about it.
but
But
they're not
that's
the same.
separate and different from meditation.
Right, and they're not the same. You don't get that same bang for your buck when you breathe diaphragmatically. So people are grateful to learn that. And then, of course, there is the other piece, which is, how do you work with what's going on in your mental world? And again, this is virgin territory for a lot of people, because we grow up hearing, "Stop crying, you shouldn't feel that way, you're too sensitive, that shouldn't bother you, let it roll off your shoulder." And we learn, in Buddhism that, the Four Noble Truths, that running away from what is troubling us causes suffering. And that seeing about hanging on to what we love and enjoy also causes suffering. It prevents us from being present in the moment. And so this is an integral part of MBI and, mind body intelligence practice, are those, precepts.
You make a distinction with the First Noble Truth. Rather than to say life is suffering, you say that it's part of being human to feel discomfort. I think that is such a better description of the Buddhist philosophy.
Well, thank you, Pat. This is something I was taught by Pema Chodron. And yeah, that's a mistranslation, evidently,
Mhm.
and terribly discouraging, I think. To
Yes.
believe, sign on to this belief system, and you've got to accept that life is suffering.
This is
Or
right up there with you sin and you go to hell.
exactly, exactly. So the only good place to be is dead. So no, 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 no. And so discomfort translates into a whole bunch of things that are part of the fabric of our daily lives, like I'm sitting at a light and it's taking longer than I think it ought to take. That's discomfort. I don't, it doesn't go with what I expected. Or, more startling, someone cut me off, at the intersection, which is scary.
Hmm.
Um, and all sorts of things. Oh my God, you took the last piece of birthday cake.
Well, betrayal, losing a job. I mean, there's all degrees of discomfort that we experience.
Right, right. And so, being open to that experience, understanding it, being compassionate and kind to ourselves, these are some ways that we move through that in a helpful way, in a healthy way.
I think for me, at least, one of the greatest benefits of a regular meditation practice is becoming the observer. Talk a little bit about that because I think that's another um, aspect of meditation that people don't understand, and yet it is so profoundly powerful.
Okay. So, one of the wonderful things about mind body intelligence is the recognition that we have inner characters. And I haven't met anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about when I say critical witness,
Hmm.
part of us that observes and comments and says, oh, well, you shouldn't have done that, or that was stupid, or what's wrong with you, or when are you going to get this together, or how come you procrastinate so much, etc., etc. And depending on how we're raised, our critical witness could be bigger or smaller, but everybody's got one. And talking about observation, so we all need an observer. We all need to be seen and to have a way of processing what we're doing and what we're going to do next. So the idea in MBI is that we work with our critical witness. It's another example of embracing that which is difficult. And we invite her or him to grow up to be a benevolent witness. And a benevolent witness is your own internal best friend who observes you and isn't, Pollyanna-ish. It's like, there, darling, whatever you do is fine.
It's like
But,
when you reach for that cookie and the your more benevolent witness says, "Wouldn't you really rather go for a walk?"
or she says, I see that you really want that cookie.
Mm.
I see that you really want that. Um, would you like to think about whether that's the right thing right now? Or, example, sorry, that I give in the book is, I cut myself shaving. So critical witness, first of all, gets scared. Oh my God, what'd you do? Look at that. You're bleeding now. How careless, how stupid. What were you thinking? What are you doing? Okay. Whereas benevolent witness is going to breathe and she's going to say, oh, wow, look at that. We're cut. Yeah, I guess you got to stop that blood right now. Yeah, okay. Well, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. Let's just take care of it. And once that's done, then she'll say, well, I guess maybe next time we got to figure out what happened. Oh, yeah, you were thinking about what you have to do at work and you got distracted. So note to self, and the next time we're shaving, we're going to see about being present and just taking care of that so we don't get hurt. So, that's benevolent witness. And when we sit in concentration meditation, we have the opportunity to work with critical witness and help her grow up. And we do that by seeing when she shows up, like, you can't meditate, or your head is so full of thoughts. What made you think you could do this, etc. Or stop thinking. And we say, if you have something to say to me, I'll listen, but you have to be respectful. That's the deal. And we do that, we acknowledge, and we come back to the breath. And then if she has something to say that's useful, we're going to listen. But that'll be benevolent witness speaking. That'll be, oh, I'm scared, or I'm discouraged. I'm afraid we can't do it. All right. Right now, I'm going to focus on the breath, and we'll come back. We'll come back to that.
Let's run through the Four Noble Truths for people who may not be familiar with them because they offer a great deal of insight, I think, in terms of navigating the turbulent aspects of our life.
Okay. So, the first noble truth is that life has discomfort,
Hmm.
which means things aren't always going to go our way, basically. Um, and I don't think there's anybody who would disagree with that. We all experience that every day, and maybe even for a good part of the day. So that's the first noble truth. The second noble truth says that there are reasons for suffering that don't have to do with these discomforts, other than that they may trigger the suffering. And the reason for the suffering is mostly two aspects of our mental formations, and one is clinging, and the other is aversion. Clinging is, oh, watching fireworks. Love being there. Love being with a whole bunch of people who are excited about love colors. Okay, so I can be present. I can be in the here and now, and enjoy it, or I could be clinging. Okay, wow, look at that. Oh, uh-oh, there's a whole bunch at once. Maybe this is the grand finale. Oh, I hope it isn't. I want this to go on. Where can I see fireworks tomorrow? Perfect example of clinging. And it interferes with our ability to be present. It interferes with our ability to not only enjoy what's happening right now, to drink deeply of our experience, but also to be present and available for what's going to come next. So maybe what's going to come next is my granddaughter sitting next to me saying, "Oh, Safta, that was wonderful. I love that." And then that increases my joy to be available for that. If I'm in my head and I'm thinking about how I can get more of this, I'm not present for that.
No, you've missed the moment totally. And I think that a lot of people go through life in their head and really miss the small and large significant moments.
It's true. It's true because we are preoccupied and because we live on screens in a
Mm.
digital world, and we don't offer ourselves a break from that very much. And it's very hypnotic, and we want to do it. So that's clinging. And then there's aversion. And aversion is, I want no parts of this thing that is difficult. I'm not going to deal with it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to run away from it as quickly as I can. And what that does is it increases our suffering because no one's home to deal with this painful thing. It's like being, a 5-year-old, and you fall down, and mom and dad happen to be down the street talking to some neighbors. Nobody's there to help you, but the pain exists, the fear exists. So one of the things that MBI has to offer is a way to take care of the parts of us that suffer, to really embrace them, and heal. We heal from that. Whereas if we deny, we repress, we run away, whatever that painful thing is, it's just going to sit there. You
Well,
know,
and healing, we were talking about this before we got on. Healing, and a lot of these modalities are experiential. And that's really important because when you experience something, you own it. It's related to your heart as well as your mind. And
right.
I think that's where real wisdom comes from.
Mm, yeah, I think so too. And there are wise parts of ourselves. I think
Mhm.
the benevolent witness has a lot of wisdom, and when we can connect with that character, she has a lot to offer us. But speaking of aversion, I had a very powerful experience recently. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I wasn't I wasn't feeling good. And I thought, well, if I go to the bathroom, maybe I'll feel better. Mm. My stomach was bothering me. My legs were aching, my feet were aching. It's like, well, it's 5 in the morning. I'd really love to go back to sleep. Well, okay, let's practice. So I began breathing and um and and this is working with my body mind, and saying, okay, let me feel what I'm feeling in my body. Now, there's part of me that says, no, 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 don't you do that. It's already bothering you. It's only going to be work. Go away. Don't do that. And I thought, well, no, let me see about this. So, um, and there's a practice that we do called deep body healing, which is a kind of a progressive relaxation practice, but it's got qigong in it. So we're dealing with energy and sending healing energy and loving kindness to our bodies. And so this is what I began to do. So I started here, which is always tense when I wake up in the middle of the night for whatever reason. And suddenly to my mind comes this image of lying on a bed of rose petals. And I'm loving that. Now, meantime, all these other sensations are still happening in my body, although this is starting to relax. And then, and this is my, I didn't create this. I didn't think about it. It just comes. I can smell the scent of these rose petals. It's very subtle. It's really, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. And I'm breathing and I'm breathing. And then when I went to go to my stomach, which did not feel good, it was hurting. I had this fear reaction. I was like, don't go there. Don't. Okay,
Hmm.
just breathe. Just breathe. It's just like concentration meditation. Okay. And I sent some loving kindness and some elixir of chi, life force, energy there. And within about 7 or 8 minutes, I had no discomfort at all. And I went back to sleep.
That is a testament to the power of energy, something else we tend to overlook in we have these linear silos, whether it's psychology, a branch of medicine, engineering, whatever it is. And yet, I think we overlook one of the most important forces, and that is simply energy. We're all energy. And look what happened with you. I mean, that's incredible.
It was incredible. And it's so funny. It's like, well, I worked on this. I put it together. I'm not saying I created it because I feel like I'm channeling lots of things and lots of people. um, and when it's something like that happens, it's astonishing to me. It's not that I don't believe in it. I do. But then I have this experience. It's so wonderful. And it's like, oh yeah, yeah. Okay. So my body mind is learning, a new way of dealing with things, is learning that it doesn't have to be just discomfort and it doesn't have to be clenching, and I don't have to go into, anxiety and stress, which are handled by other characters, inner characters. So it's just wonderful. It's a lovely part of the path, and that's a way of dealing with aversion. That was my reason for talking about that. Is instead of running away or going to take an Advil, which I shouldn't do in the middle of the night because there's nothing in my stomach, I thought, let me just open to this. What is it? Let me embrace it, and let me see if I can offer some healing to myself.
And that actually moves to the third noble truth, which you say suffering ends as we are able to release our resistance to the natural ebb and flow of experience.
Right, right. And that is something we can provide for ourselves, that it's within us. We have the resources, we have the wisdom. It's just a question of being open to a path and allowing ourselves to engage.
I think a lot of people on a quest for greater spirituality in their lives look outside themselves. And yet, Many learned texts, as well as people, will say all the answers lie within.
Right, right. And we don't want to take care of ourselves. When we talk about compassion, which we do in MBI, people say, "Oh, I'm very good at sending compassion to other people, but I can't do that for myself." And that is so steeped in Western culture that there's actually a book about psychology and meditation written by two psychologists that says, now there's a particular practice called Tong Lin, which is sending and taking, which is um, a way of offering compassion to ourselves and to other people. And they say, oh, well, Americans can't do that. We're not capable. So it's okay to start by sending compassion to somebody else.
Oh, whoa, whoa. I'm gonna stop there because I would argue that until you have compassion for yourself, you can't possibly give it to somebody else.
Right. I'm with you. I'm with you. So when I read that, I was like, and that's not the teaching, That's not the teaching. That's not the practice. And so, but that's a challenge for people. And so, one of the things in the book is a little schematic, and this comes from Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a wonderful Zen a master whose books are fantastic and I highly recommend. And he's very psychologically savvy as well. Um, he talks about when you're distressed, that you need to come and do something about the distressed part of yourself. So I call this holding the crying baby. And I have a little schematic in the book. And the idea is that, just like we were talking about, when you realize there's a part of you that's suffering, you send your benevolent witness to hold that part that's suffering, put their arms around the crying baby. And what happens is she or he begins to feel better because they're being held, they're being loved, they're being seen, which is what we all want.
Mhm.
And as the suffering diminishes, then our problem solving adults can come and say, all right, well, what happened? What do we need? What can we do better? But we can't do that if there's a crying baby and a critical witness who's all frightened and saying, what'd you do that for? You stop crying, and you got yourself in trouble again. We ask the critical witness, calm down, it'll be okay, you're scared, stop yelling, and then we can do the rest. And there's a wonderful story. I teach professionals also, which is, in my hope is they'll incorporate that into their therapeutic practice. And this one woman had like an 8-year-old son, and she told the story of, they went to some kind of play activity, and he had pogs, which were these little flat discs with designs on them that kids used to collect. And he had a whole beautiful collection, and he wanted to take them in. And she said, no, Joseph, don't do that. Oh, I really need to, Mom. I have to. So, all right. So when it was time to go, pogs were gone. And he didn't say anything in the car. And when they got home, she looked at him and he looked very sad. And she said, you look really sad. And he just burst into tears. And what she did, and I was so impressed because, we psychologists, we like to talk. She just held him. She held the crying baby, and they were in the kitchen. They slid down the center cabinet, and they just sat there. And she just held him. And then in a little while, he stopped crying, and he looked up at her with his tear-stained eyes, and he said, Mommy, I feel better. And I
Oh.
don't know why, because I didn't get my pogs back, but I feel better.
You bring up that idea of being seen, which I think is really important. And I would argue that in this day and age of social media, we're seeing less and less, actually. And I think that's part of this mental health crisis that we see in this country. What
Mm.
do you think?
Yeah, I think that the art of seeing another person is a neglected one. And I mean, you can see it everywhere. You can see it in interpersonal relationships, and you can see it in international relationships. And I think that our digital world is a world, and but it has its own rules and it has its limits. I mean, I think of, I always think of The Matrix, the sci-fi film about
Great film.
li- living in the digital world. And sometimes people say to me, what about this? Is this? I'll say, read your science fiction. Read your science fiction. You'll know what's coming.
We'll talk about something that triggers your inner critic. I mean, social media, it just like has that button right there because it's very hierarchical. Somebody's always better, somebody's always wealthier, somebody's always prettier. And these are total illusions. And yet people internalize them.
Yeah, it's true. And it's certainly, a hazard for our adolescents who are so impressionable and looking desperately, for to be seen. That's what they want. And, it's not the same thing as having friends in the real world. It's not the
Yeah.
same thing.